So I'm Renata Spinks. I'm the CEO of CyberSec International. We are a consulting and operations boutique company, meaning, there's a lot that happens in cybersecurity, but we focus on just very strategic approaches, whether that's how do you get into the front door of the Department of Defense and how do you identify your requirements properly and how do you engage. So lots of engagement, strategic thought processing, use cases, and helping people just figure out how do you present that value add to the Department of Defense. And then how do you do it in such a manner to where it's progressive? You may not get an award the first time or the second time, but how do you build that rapport and how you build those relationships and how do you become those go-to companies for the Department of Defense? So that's one service.
Mm-hmm.
The second service is very consultative. We do a lot of research. We provide white papers, basically taking the load off of everything to the left of operations. So if you're trying to plan policies and governance and, but everyone kind of jumps into the operations side. They want to install that next tool. They want to use it.
Mm-hmm.
But most times it's been harder to understand, well, how is the policy going to be affected when you roll that particular device out or that particular capability? And if the policy is not affected, are you infringing on people's privacy rights, their civil liberties? Cyber has a lot of different things you have to consider. And we all get excited about the tools. And sometimes we have to kind of go back in that policy catch up or governance catch up.
Yeah.
So I like to tell people we do everything to the left of operations because that's the hard part. It's the nitty gritty part that you got to put some thought into.
Yeah.
But it's also that time when, as government, they're thinking through being great stewards of their financial obligations to the constituents of America. That's who pays the salaries of government employees.
Yes.
And so being great stewards comes with questions and answers. And so people want to know, well, why did you invest in that particular technology? Or why did you use those techniques to deploy that technology? Or, why did you make that decision? And when you start to get why, then people start to realize a few things that they probably didn't think through.
Yeah.
And so we provide that left of operations to help you with your why.
Yeah.
Most people can show up in the room and they can give you how and what very quickly. How can you deploy it? What are you deploying? What capability are you improving? But sometimes the why can kind of just jolt you just a little bit because it's hard. Technology is hard. It's changing every day. And so that third capability is we're providing true cybersecurity, whether that's risk management, whether that's how do you speed up continuous monitoring or speed up the way the ATO process works. Try to take what people call bureaucracy. I say guardrails, right?
Oh my goodness.
I think they're guardrails.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy, I think, is very valuable because it forces people to slow down.
Yes.
And think through things that could affect not just one set of persons or one culture, but in the federal government, you're touching systems that are located overseas sometimes, right? And you're affecting the lives professionally and personally of people all over the world. So the bureaucracy is there as those guardrails that I appreciate. And so my company being so boutique, we're helping with those guardrails.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we find ourselves showing where that guardrail probably could be removed here, but the one that's 5 meters up probably should stay there because we've made a little bit of progress and maybe we need to kind of take a step back and retrospect and see, well, let's do a little bit of incremental so that we don't wait, a year or two, spend all this money on technology that now is outdated because technology has moved so fast.
Yes.
So I like to say we're bringing the guardrails closer to the capabilities and then allowing people to respond to it in a manner that's more efficient.
Yes.
And so we do that in the cyberspace.
Yeah.
I stay in my lane. I don't try to talk about, what that amphib from a Marine Corps perspective, what that boat is supposed to do, what that ship is supposed to. I just stay in the system side of cyber.
Yes.
And we let all the other experts handle
that stuff.
the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what CyberSec International does, and we do that on an international scale. So not just within the United States, but we look at mission partners and who's all trying to do business with the federal government.
Yeah.
but also those mission partners and our allies. So we also focus on how do we work with other countries and how do we all, come together in this cyber warfare, because, when the bad guy's showing up, he's not saying, well, I don't want to attack them because
no, he's not.
They're just like, I want to rehabilitate their ability to move forward, or I want to affect their readiness, or I want to affect their economy. Or most recently, we spent a lot of resources, valid resources, on I would like to affect the election. So different things like that. Like I want to infringe on your democracy. I don't really care who you are.
Wow.
It's zeros and ones to them.
Yeah, no, you have an incredible and crazy job. Like, and I don't mean crazy in a bad way. I mean crazy in like, oh my gosh, that's like a lot of like security for a lot of important things. So I want to know how you got started in this. I know you said you have a background in being in the military. So tell me about that and how it led you to where you are today.
Well, I'll tell you the things that happen when you're a little girl. I've actually dabbled in technology from, just a little girl when my mother was taking business administration courses online. Or through what they call correspondence courses at that time. Years and years and years ago. I won't date myself by years, but years and years and years ago. But she had this thing called typewrite. It was a little red little typewrite. We call it a little computer.
Yeah.
And the screen was really small, but it was just teaching you how to type, the QWERTY board, right? A little red and white or gray. Well, I got in trouble one day because I took it apart. I flipped it over and was like, what's this little weird thing? Why is those letters up there? Like, I'm not trying to figure out how to type, because she was taking those courses. It was like secretarial and how do you go from a typewriter into this typewrite machine thing.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't care about that part. I wanted to know, well, where's that little gray? Like, what is that little screen thing? So I took it apart. Now, I was young. I didn't know that I was getting ready to get in trouble because I stopped my mother's only device that they had sent her in the mail. I think it was Penn Foster. I think she was taking courses with Penn Foster, I think. But the point is, I got in trouble because now I've messed up her ability to do her coursework.
Yeah. Because
I have taken apart what I thought was a machine that I wanted to see what's going on the inside of it. Like, I don't understand. Well, what I didn't know was that was my first step into being curious about technology. Now, life happens, and I went through high school and studied a lot of things. I even took a few courses for coding in junior high, but it didn't correlate until I got older. I didn't know that, we're just taking a computer class that was being offered at our junior high. And, and so I went on through high school, and I always liked technology, but I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Because I'm a big debater. I'm very, I like to justify things. And I like to figure out, why was this done? And was it right when you did it? And I like to defend against it. So I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I said I wanted to be a corporate lawyer because I like the business side of things.
Yeah.
And I like having rules and making sure people are staying within those boundaries. And so I think I want to be a lawyer because that's what, at that time people were saying, you would make a great lawyer. I was, had a debate and things like that. And so I was like, okay. And then it wasn't until life kind of took a turn and I joined the military.
Yeah.
Right. And I joined the military in the medical corps for the Army.
Yeah.
And I was introduced then to very granular technology, meaning everything was not what we see today. The cloud did not exist. We didn't have these large data centers. Everyone was kind of on premises, but no one really was thinking about, in my space, where's that data going? Like, we just didn't have that thought process. We were still very manual with medical records. We were still very manual with coding and things like that, ICD-9 coding, until I got deployed.
Yeah. And
things started to happen where discrepancy of information was now threatening the loss of life and loss of limb, and so it was, it would be great if we had this information not stuck in a paper somewhere, but actually in a system that everyone could utilize. Yeah. And by that time, computers were everywhere, but not in the households of underrepresented children at that time, quite possibly. We see a lot of that effort now, but at that time, not so much, right? And so we weren't really exposed to technology, but a lot of things were happening in the technology space. So for me, I started to ask our comms platoon, a commo team, which is communications.
Yeah.
They had all the splitting happening. There was cabling everywhere. They were creating internet connections and the ability to use computers and our laptops in the middle of a desert. It was amazing.
That's incredible.
And so I was accustomed to plugging something into a wall and there's some data port that's running in the back. All these wires are going up through the ceiling. So I was very familiar with those things because I was inquisitive. But in the middle of a desert where there's nothing but sand, that became very interesting. Like, I'm like, I want to be a part of that. But it was also predicated and probably invigorated by mass chaos during a deployment.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking war fighting in a medical space.
Oh, man.
And so it's mass chaos sometimes. The pace is very quick and decision-making is really high risk, right? It's very high risk. And it's no longer a risk to reputation. Think about that when you think about cybersecurity. Sometimes it's, well, the bad guy just wants to make the United States look bad. Well, it wasn't risk to reputation we were dealing with. It was not risk to economy. It was not risk to how you feel. It was risk to people losing their lives.
Yeah.
And so for me, sometimes we would get information and either information would be delayed. Sometimes the technology would, like radios, you would kind of what you hear now, you hear static, right?
Yep.
And sometimes information is not coming over accurately or you're just not getting it clearly. And so you're trying to figure out, are we prepping the OR room? Are we wheeling people out to the helicopter as it lands? Mm-hmm. And then if we're doing that, we're sending out gurneys, what are they needing to go out with? Mm-hmm. Right? Do they need a mobile ultrasound because they can't get back to the operating room quick enough because someone's hemorrhaging? Well, you're getting all that over the radio, but what if you don't hear it?
Yeah, no, then it's over.
And they don't know you don't hear it because they're communicating and they're saying, you know, how say you, and no one's on the other line saying loud and clear. So now maybe the communication is not occurring. So now we have a readiness problem. Are they going to be ready when we land to receive this soldier that's hemorrhaging or, you know, has been injured and it's life or death? So we need you to come out and be ready to save this soldier's life. And so I had a couple of those experiences and it was very frustrating. Mm-hmm. You know, when your heart and soul is involved in saving people's lives, it can be very frustrating when things just don't go right. Yeah. And so I got into fix it mode. Like we should have we should figure out why this technology is not working right. Why is the radios not connecting and why can't we hear? And so that's how I realized I like technology.
You do.
Yeah, love technology. And so that probably was the foundation to why I got into technology. Now, why I got into the cybersecurity part of it was just a combination of a lot of experiences that we don't have a lot of time today to talk about. Yeah. But I think the most impactful one, I like to answer this question by thinking, if one thing through my career had not happened, would I be in cybersecurity? The answer is that one thing is had I not studied human trafficking and child exploitation.
Oh, wow.
And got a chance to work with the human side of intelligence and seeing how technology was being used at that time in support of agents that are investigating that every day. And that was at the Office of Immigration and Customs Enforcement under Homeland Security. Had I not had that experience and introduced to forensics and the way mobile technology is used and how you think money is going from one destination to another, but is being intercepted and sent to a totally different place. And then there's criminal behavior attached to it. And now they don't want to get caught because they don't want you to stop them from doing the things they want to do. So now you're disguising things in technology. And it was just I didn't understand it. I'm like, well, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
Right. It's always for me, it was like, well, how are they doing that? And then, you know, having a passion for people, being in that space, you know, it's not something that I liked to investigate or help with those investigations, but it was something that I felt a calling for at that time in my life.
Yeah.
And it was just things that are happening, unfortunately, across the world. And if I can just have one piece of impact to be able to research why that credit card data was stolen and used over here at this place, and we think it's by some operation that's occurring in another place, but they're trying to make us think it's happening over here, so law enforcement can't, you know, so you got all this
steps ahead.
Right. And so that's how I got into cyber, just foundational to investigations and forensics extractions.
Yeah.
And then it just kept going and kept going. Never did I think it would lead me where I am today. But I think that's how I got into the whole cyber technology thing.
Yeah, that is an incredible story. And I wish I could hear more of your stories, but I know we're crunching on time or whatever.
Yes,
But
yes.
that is incredible. And I think you did find your calling, especially like that story you told me right now about your mom having that little typewrite and you taking it apart. Like from then on, your mind has always just been curious about how things work. And I think that that's just incredible. And the work that you're doing right now to make an impact in protecting us and helping other people in other countries is incredible. And thank you so much for being here. It's just, I love hearing that. I'd like to know, on your team, do you have a team? Talk to me about your team and who you have.
So I have a couple of people on my team besides the operations of a business. You know, you have your executive assistant, you have your CPA, like all the things that keep you compliant with running a company that my cybersecurity mind just, it's a hard time processing all of the things it takes to not just be the CEO, but to be the owner.
That's right.
But then we have some what we call 1099 employees that work for us, engineers, cybersecurity consultants who are billed out to a few contracts. I'm happy to say, very small contracts, but you got to start somewhere. Yeah. But we, just because they're 1099 and they're not W-2, what they call W-2 to the company, they still are like family to us. And when we see opportunities where their expertise is needed, we definitely send out proposals and we bid on them. And we were getting lucky here. We're getting pretty lucky. I call it the blessing from God. Always grateful for the opportunities and when people allow you to come into their space to solve some problem that they have is always it's something I think people should always be grateful for. Yes. But yeah, so we have about five. I have about 5 people that are consistently looking for work within my company. 2 of them are gainfully employed and 3 of them are not. And so right now I'm just looking for that. And as we look to grow revenue into the company, I hope to bring them on as full-time employees inside the company. But right now we're walk, crawl, run.
Yeah. You gotta start and play the hard game and then
get
there, right?
Grinding.
But absolutely. I have no doubt that you're gonna reach that. And I'm so excited. And I love that we have this type of hardworking small business people that are on the come up and just going to change the game. I'd like to ask you with cybersecurity, what are some things that you have found to be challenging as a business owner in your industry, whether it's with maybe, I guess, hiring, whether it's with looking for clients? Talk to me about some of those challenges and how you've been able to overcome them.
There's always challenges in a competitive space like technology, you know, and then in this area, it's very competitive. The Beltway bandits are everywhere, right? But I would say that my experience with those challenges, I think maybe it's because I was in the government for such a long time. And then I just spent the past 6 to 7 years, actually almost 10 years at a high enough level to kind of see how industry responds and how industry partners with the government. So my expectations, I think, were a little on point. And so I guess the experience wasn't as jolting as it could be for others, because I kind of expected the competition. I expected that, you know, sometimes people can be grimy and they can waste your time. Some of my mentors say, you know, people will waste your time. Well, I'm a people person. So if they want to waste my time, at least it was a great conversation. That's the way I see it, right? Yeah. But I did get to the point where I need to manage my calendar a little better because I started to see I just can't be everything for everybody all the time. And I'm really trying to build a company. So that challenge of mindset and mentality was probably the first thing that I kind of had to have a lot of lessons learned about. As far as the recruitment, there's a lot of talent out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of talent in a space where we haven't really mastered the science behind talent management. There's a lot of barriers that I love within the OPM and the Department of Defense and U.S. government. You're starting to see people open up the aperture just a little bit about certifications versus a degree versus experience. So you're starting to kind of see a paradigm shift. The pendulum is swinging to more flexibility in the cyberspace, where it used to be very restrictive. You had to have a degree, you know, you had to have, 5 years of experience. Now you're starting to see, people be a little bit more considerate of, well, I may not be certified, but what if I have the experience of a person who knows or who has those certifications?
Absolutely.
I've met people who have experience and their experience outweighs others who have a degree. Yeah. But I can't hire them because they don't have that piece of paper.
Yeah.
So in my past, that was A challenge. I'm seeing now that there's some flexibility being added. We're thinking very differently. Most recently, some conversations about workforce management has happened at the OPM level. And so they're really thinking through, how can we get the kind of talent in that we need. Restrictive on salaries. That experience in the federal government, we had a challenge there on pay.
Yeah.
And what I love that I see now is congressionally and senatorially, people are thinking differently on compensation.
Yes.
Right? But lastly, I think what I love about all of this is you also start to see the paradigm shift of partnership within the government. Industry is learning how to partner with the government, and the government is also learning how to partner with industry while staying within the boundaries of ethics and all of the different things that we have to consider to stay compliant and stay ethical and do things the right way, keep the competition proper, make sure we're trying to be as diverse as possible, all the things, right? And so I think I just have an optimistic attitude, because some people always tell me like, you can't see the forest for looking at the tree type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just really am that kind of person that you identify the problem. If you mull over it as a problem and never try to solve it, then we're still where we are.
Yep.
But if we look at it as an opportunity to think differently and to absorb what others are also bringing to the table, then that's where that diversity of thought comes from. So those are the three challenges that I see within talent management.
Yeah.
The last most important challenge for me, I'll just keep it at 2 today.
Yeah.
The last one I want to mention is how the cybersecurity landscape continues to evolve.
Yes,
There's a book
please.
that I love. It's called The World is Flat. This book was written so many years ago, but it's called The World is Flat.
Yeah.
And it talks about the introduction of the internet at that time. I think there's a couple more updated editions out there now.
Okay.
But I studied that when I was in college. It was an assignment that the professor gave us. And the world has become more flat, right? It's flatter and flatter. You can talk to someone in Zimbabwe today on video and feel like you're right there with them, right? Because of technology.
I was like, wait, what do you mean by flat? But I'm getting it.
Yeah, there's no more boundaries and restrictions because I have to get on the plane to go and see you in your other country. It used to be Skype. Now it's Teams or your cell phone or Zoom or, Cisco. Like, it's whatever, take your pick. You can connect nowadays. Google Meet, like, it's everybody. Right? I don't even want to start mentioning because somebody may feel kind of left out. But, so you have videography and you have those abilities to talk to people, right? And so the world has become flatter and flatter. But what that comes with is adversarial attacks, whether that's I just want to be disruptive, I just don't want you to be able to communicate, or it could be economically stimulated, it could be reputationally stimulated, whatever the reason is. We have to consider that on the other side of greatness and evolution and innovation is an adversarial threat that's trying to stop whatever progressive movement we're trying to make in the emerging technology space.
Yeah.
Our critical infrastructure is, one of the areas that adversaries continue to focus on, whether that's our economy from a financial perspective, or it's something as simple as the lights in here. Well, the grid is being attacked every day.
Wow.
Our identities are being stolen every day and being used in God knows where locations for whatever reason. Sometimes it's just to sell the information. Sometimes it's to create other identities. The FBI has a large percentage of identity theft cases that they're always investigating amongst everything, amongst a lot of that mission. Law enforcement is fighting all kinds of things, whether that's drug, enforcing from a drug perspective, or like, the passion that I have with combating human trafficking and child exploitation, children, all the way down to something as simple as, intellectual property and theft. Like some of my colleagues, when we have these conversations, they get it about people being killed. They get it when murder is happening and you got to investigate. But when you say something like patents and trades,
you're kind of like,
they're like, like, not a big deal. But it really is a big deal, that those parameters are put in place, and there's financial royalties that people are receiving and different things like that. So, not that one sector is more important than the other, but the reality is there are some risks to life and limb that take precedence over administrative or what people would look at as intangible versus tangible effects of cyber operations. But the world is flat makes you kind of understand that it doesn't matter which sector the bad guy's attacking. It affects something else all the time. So, as I think about those challenges, I look at it as there's always an opportunity. We just got to figure out where we're focusing on.
Yeah.
Me, I want to focus on continuity because ransomware is eating us for lunch every day.
That's so stressful and scary to think about.
And then understanding how we have those challenges, why those challenges are there, but more so, how do we address those challenges? So I like to kind of concentrate on building resiliency and business continuity, continuously monitoring. How can we be proactive versus reactive? And then educating the workforce. When I was at the IRS, I experienced for the first time in my career buyouts. I had no idea what that was. I didn't know that, early retirement could be offered. I didn't even know what that was. And so as I started to see the workforce change, I also started to see the workforce shift because some of the baby boomers and those cross-generational statuses, some of them weren't retiring. Some of them were staying. And when you looked at 30 years within the IRS, well, you do the math. There were mainframes and things were on premises when they came in. And now we're trying to transition them to the cloud. So what my experience was there, 2 years of, number one, appreciating the institutional knowledge that I was experiencing. But also, how do I have that conversation to not resist the change and not resist the adoption of new technology? But how do I welcome it? How do I make them feel part of the team and not feel like, well, you're old, go over there and sit down? Because I saw that and I didn't like that. Because I thought about, well, if that was my mom or that was my grandmother or my grandfather who's in here probably trying to pay for grandbabies, probably trying to pay student loan debt. Like it's all kinds of things that could possibly keep you in the workplace. Or maybe not. Maybe you planned great for your retirement and you saved up money and you're a millionaire, but you just like helping people. Whatever the reason is. I don't want you to treat someone a way that they should not be treated. A lot of people say, well, you should treat people the way you want to be treated. No. Because you may want to be treated that way. I don't know. I'm going to treat you the way you should be treated. Like I'm going to treat you. I'm going to be a good person. And I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to treat you right. In the workplace, it was the same thing. And just kind of seeing that at the IRS, that's where my passion for workforce development and cross-training came from. And I got a chance to actually do it there because we had such a seasoned set of people in IT. And so I took that experience to the Marine Corps, and it was easier to do within the military because you do have genres of generations of personnel, whether that's 3 and 4 star generals that I had the pleasure of working with versus a young lieutenant or a young private coming in that's, the age of my children, right? And then you got all that in between. And so how do we keep that continuity of work? How do we increase adoption of new technology? And the success stories there continue to be something that I just beat like a drum whenever I have a chance. We literally moved the entire Marine Corps in a collaboration space from on-premises to a cloud environment. And we shut down data centers and extra domains to reduce our cyber landscape in 6 months during COVID.
Oh my goodness.
So when people tell me, well, we have an adoption problem, the baby boomers, they don't understand technology, and it's offensive to me. And I'm going to say something about it if I'm sitting there. I'm like, no, we have a leadership problem. That's what we have.
I love your honesty.
Okay. We have a leadership problem because you want to talk about seasoned personnel instead of rolling your sleeves up and trying to understand the value that everyone brings to the table. And how do we take all that goodness and make greatness? Like, how do we do that? Instead of, well, that's bad. Well, no, is it really? Or do you just not care enough to understand where they're coming from?
That
do you just not care, right? And so that third one is always the big deal for me. So just kind of recap. Love the administrative piece, the hiring, all of the things it takes to run a company. That's thing number one. In parallel, thing number 2 is technology. Right? Cybersecurity is what I do. I love it. I like securing things. I love being proactive. And my third area of focus is that workforce team. Because none of those first 2 things that I did not give you in a level of priority because they're all 3. They're like in parallel. All of them are important to me. On Mondays is my admin day. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays is my technology day. On Friday, I'm thinking about who can I mentor? Do I have mentoring, scheduling? And then how do I have conversations with people about that, people about their policies of like, how do you manage workforce? Do you need help writing position descriptions? Do you need help training people? And then if you need help training, we want to come in and do an assessment of, are you training them properly? Mm-hmm. My family is full of all generations. And sometimes I have to pull myself back because I get a text message to say, thank you for calling me. You took me too fast. I still don't know how to work this thing. On the other end, I may get a text message. Thank you, Auntie. I got it now. Oh. And so you have to kind of consider, just because you're training people don't mean you're training them in the right manner to where they can consume the information and then turn around and put it into practice.
Yes.
And that takes work.
Yes, it does.
And because it takes work, you have to care.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right there.
No, I love it. And I think you definitely do care. And I love that you put yourself in other people's shoes. Like, no, don't treat like the older generation. Like, like that could be your mom. A lot of people don't think like that. They're like, oh, whatever. And it's like, stop and think, like, what if that was someone that you love and care about? So I think that perspective is really great that you have as a team leader, as a CEO. I think that is so important. And a lot of people forget that. So I love that you're grounded in that way. And that is a beautiful thing to have as a business owner and as a woman, just in power. Like, I love it. I love to see it. I love to hear about it. Now, is there anything maybe that I have not touched on that maybe you would like to share? Maybe you're writing a book. Maybe you have something fun planned for New Year's Eve. I don't know.
Yeah. So we got all the things. Of course, I'm studying for my PhD. That's in parallel to everything else we're doing. The good part about my PhD is in cybersecurity. So I kind of can study the things I'm working on already. So that's great. So I got my PhD on the books. Hopefully by 2025, 2026, we'll finish that thing out. Yes, I am part of a couple books that we are co-authoring. We have been sworn to secrecy, so we can't tell the titles and things like that. But there are a couple of books. One I'm writing by myself, and another one I am writing with two other authors. Okay. And it's going to be so great. I will tell you, it is about IT, but it's also about everything, right? Shocker. And you will be able to know, oh, Miss Spinks wrote that part. You will be able to tell. So that's great. And then, of course, we got some New Year's Eve plans happening. 2025 is going to be life-changing for me. I'm excited about it. But yeah, CyberSec, the CEO, has a lot of things happening in 2025, but I'm looking forward to some things I can't talk about right now that's happening with the New Year's Eve. But if you follow me on Facebook, you'll probably see it. I don't really post personal things on LinkedIn, but I probably will post this thing on LinkedIn. But call me on January the 1st and you'll probably say, that's what she was talking about on the podcast.
Okay, we'll keep our eye out
some exciting things. And unfortunately, you asked me, is there anything I can share? And I gave you all 3 secrets.
You did. But really, you didn't give me anything. But you gave me 3 secrets.
But I gave you 3 secrets.
But I appreciate it. No, thank you. We got the exclusive here from Renata.
That's right. Absolutely. Right from the mouth herself.
Yes. All right. And now for my last question. I could talk to you literally all day. I'm so sorry.
I could too. Right? This is awesome.
We need to make this longer. But anyway, would you mind leaving us with a message or a quote or anything that maybe someone has said in your life that has inspired you that you want to pass along to our listeners?
Oh, so many. This is why you didn't prep me. Okay. It's very authentic, right? I
told you.
I know. What is something, there are so many things that people have told me that changed my life, but I will tell you the one that keeps me grounded. Not really told to me. It's just a poem that I keep going back to it because it's so powerful to me. I think when people sit down and study this poem, it would also be powerful to them, but may not be on the top of their minds. And it's Fear. It's a poem that I think about it and it encapsulates everything. It encapsulates when you're scared and why we make actions, whether that's how you feel about yourself, because there's a part of the poem that says, who am I not to be wonderful? I'm a child of God. I love that. But when you think about it, do you really wake up in the morning knowing how wonderful you are? Most times we don't.
No.
I just got off the phone with the love of my life, and he was like, why do you beat yourself up? Because I said, man, I don't like my makeup and I should have did this. And he was just like,
cute.
Like, stop. And I took that in from him. And it kind of reminded me that that's why you have that poem in your bathroom and all over your house, because it reminds you that, you know, the fear is not that we're inadequate. The fear is that you are powerful beyond measure.
Yes.
And as you start to read that poem and go all the way to, you know, just kind of let yourself be great. And then share that with others, because when you share that with somebody else, then it's infectious.
Yes.
It allows that other person to know that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not have good moments. I didn't say it's okay to have a bad day. I said it's okay to have bad moments. We're going to get over it real quick if we can. There are things that are catastrophic that may take a little longer, but we got to keep grinding. We got to get through it. But it's not from a beat yourself up perspective. You know, mental health came into play during COVID. Got highlighted a lot. You don't really hear a lot of people talking about it anymore as big as it was during COVID, right? But it still is a big deal. It's things that get us up in the morning and lay us down at night.
That's right.
How you feel about yourself mentally. Because if you always talk about it, that's great. But sometimes if you're not feeling good, you don't really tell people. You try to kind of deal with it, right? And then that can kind of take you to different spirals. And so that poem, you know, fear, is probably the thing that not only changed my life when I read it, because I read it when I was very young, but it continues to keep me grounded. That's one of them. And you know, maybe a second one is I read a lot of books. Yeah. There's no one author that I like more than the other or anything like that. But on my website, I do have a section of, you know, Miss Spinks readings, and it's all kinds of stuff on there. It's romance novels, it's, you know, inspirational books, but it's books I've read. It's books that have been impactful to me. Yeah. And I think if you are a well-read person, you will always be able to find something somewhere documented in something that can help you get through that next thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have you here. You have so much wisdom and insight. And I literally wish maybe when you write a book, you can write one about all your stories and all this stuff, and we can check it out, because I feel like you've got some interesting things to say. Yeah. But again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.